Power over debt. Break the debt cycle. Brought to you by Credit Union of New Jersey. This seminar is geared toward individuals who are already in debt as well as those who wish to stay out of debt. The purpose of this seminar is to give you valuable tools to manage your personal finances and your debt during good times and bad. Objectives: be familiar with different kinds of debt, know benefits, costs of debt, identify warning signs you have too much debt, improve your credit report and score, take steps to tackle your debt, avoid pitfalls, rebuild good credit score, stay out of debt. What is debt? Money that you borrow with an understanding and agreement or contract that you'll repay the funds. Not all debt is bad. Good debt can be considered an investment if the money is spent on something that appreciates in value, such as a house. A student loan or small business loan enhances your career, and responsible repayment can establish a good credit report. What is required to dig your way out of serious debt? Willpower, a commitment to change and break old habits, perseverance, a serious plan, and determination. What are 3 examples of secured debt? Debt is often first categorized by whether it is secured or unsecured debt. The correct answer is auto loan, mortgage, and boat loan. They are examples of secured debt. Credit card debt is not an example of secured debt. Secured debt means there is collateral or security on the loan that the lender can take if you don't make the payments. If you owe on a loan which was purchased by using security or collateral, such as a house, car, or boat, then you have secured debt. Unsecured debt means there is no collateral. The most common form of unsecured debt is your credit card. Unsecured debt is backed by the borrower's word, good name, reputation, and history. And if you obtain an unsecured loan from the credit union, the amount you owe is not secured. What are 3 examples of installment debt? Debt can also be categorized as being either installment debt or as revolving debt. Installment debt is sometimes referred to as close-end loans, and revolving debt is sometimes referred to as open-end loans. Correct answer is auto loans, student loans, and boat loans are examples of installment debt. Credit card debt is not an example of installment debt. Installment debt means you are making a monthly payment for a certain or set amount. The amount of fees and interest are determined in advance and become calculated into your payments. The payments are installment payments. Thus, they are installment debt. An example of revolving debt, on the other hand, is credit card debt. When you have a credit card with a balance on it, the balance will change or fluctuate depending on how many charges were made with it throughout a specified period. Thus, it's called revolving debt because the total amount you owe will always change from month to month. Credit. Back to the basics. What is the definition of credit? It's a short-term loan that allows you to make purchases now with a promise that you'll pay it back at a later date, usually monthly. If you don't pay it back in full, you're charged interest. What are the types of credit? Review from the previous 2 slides, installment versus revolving, and secured versus unsecured. What are some of the benefits of credit? Besides the benefits listed on the slide, credit, used wisely, can enhance your lifestyle, make it easier to purchase larger items like furniture or a car, and it gives you access to funds for emergencies. Most importantly, using credit cards wisely is like having an interest-free loan, as long as you pay it off in full when the bill comes due. Otherwise, you are charged interest, which increases the cost of the item you purchased. These are a few of the more common warning signs that you are in over your head with debt. Pay bills late. Only make minimum payments. At or near limit on credit cards. Don't know how much you owe. Use cash advances to pay other bills. Denied credit or credit purchase. Get calls from collection agencies. Lie to spouse or family about debt. More of total income going towards debt. If you experience any one of them, take steps immediately to get yourself back on track. If you experience more than one of the warning signs on the slide, consider visiting with staff at the credit union who can either help you or make appropriate referrals. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to get back on track. So take steps to get back on track as soon as possible. The worst thing you can do is nothing. The cost of a poor credit history. One of the best ways to explain why it's important to have a good credit history is to explain how much it costs to have a poor credit history. Let's say you need a car loan for $14,000 and you finance it for 4 years. Depending on interest rates at the time you need the loan, let's say you will get financing for 5%, which also varies depending on where you go. At 5% interest, for example, your monthly payment will be $323, and you'll pay a total of $15,504 for that $14,000 loan. But if you have a poor bill paying history, you will have to pay a much higher interest rate. In this example, the person pays an interest rate of 14%, and they pay $60 a month more than the person with good credit, which amounts to $18,384 over those 4 years. So the person with poor credit in this example paid almost $3,000 more for the same car. $60 a month doesn't sound like much, but it really adds up over time. To get the best interest rates and lowest payments possible, use credit wisely and reap the benefits. We'll talk more about this later. What is a credit report? Your credit report is a record of your bill paying history. Like it or not, if you pay late, that black mark could end up on this report, and it can mean the difference between getting good interest rates and getting costly ones. Can anyone look at your credit report? No, but anyone with a legitimate business interest can look at it. Examples: potential lenders, insurance companies, landlords, and yes, potential employers. So you may not get that job if you pay your bills late. How do you get a copy of your credit report? Visit annualcreditreport.com. Don't go to freecreditreport.com. That website is deceiving because even though it looks like you're getting information for $1, you're really signing up for a monthly monitoring service. Don't use it. What does your credit report say about you? It tells potential creditors and employers whether you have a lot of outstanding loans, how good you are at repaying your debt, and how high your credit limits are. It tells whether you have court judgments against you, such as child support payments or lawsuits, and whether you filed for bankruptcy in the past 7 or 10 years. It has some personal information, name, address, social security number, date of birth, and jobs you've held. It doesn't include race, religion, or political preference. How can you improve it? The best way? Pay all your bills on time. We'll talk more about this later. What is a credit score? Your credit score is a number that represents your credit worthiness. How likely you are to repay the loan. The higher the number, the better. What's a good score and what's a poor score? The average FICO credit score is about 693 according to Experian. Typically, anything higher than around 760 is considered a very good credit risk. If your score is lower than, say, 600, you likely will be charged higher interest rates, but it varies by lender. Besides FICO score, there's another type of credit score, Vantage score. It ranges from 501 to 990, and it's based on standard grades A to F. Know what credit score you're looking at. How can you improve your credit score? There are several things you can do to improve your credit score, but be aware that it may take time to see the improvement. Let's look at specific components of a credit score on the next slide, which will give you ideas on how you can improve it. In a nutshell, there are 5 variables that affect your credit score: payment history, amounts owed to creditors, length of credit history, new credit, and types of credit currently in use. For types of credit currently in use, an example of a healthy mix may include a mortgage, a credit card or 2, a personal loan, and a retail card. So let's return to the question, how can you improve your credit score? What do you think you can do to improve yours? Pay all bills on time. Pay down existing debt. Keep 1 or 2 credit cards for a long time, and don't keep adding new ones. Don't add new debt for a while. If you don't have a credit card, apply for one, say at the credit union, and then pay off charges monthly to establish a good credit history. Or get a small loan or a secured loan and make monthly payments on time. Now it's time to think about what you need to do to get rid of your debt. 1. Know what you owe. 2. Change credit card habits. 3. Find extra cash to pay off debt faster. 4. Know pros and cons of 401k loans. 5. Consolidate some debt. 6. Choose methods to pay down debt. 7. Contact creditors. And 8. Get help. It's probably best to start with the first one first. But let's look at each one individually. Know what you owe. The very first step to tackling your debt is to know what you owe. Add up the total amount of your debt, including any loans, as well as your monthly payments. Be sure to write down the interest rate on those debts. Next, calculate your debt-to-income ratio. This is your total monthly payments divided by your after-tax income, net income. For example, if your monthly payments total $275 and your monthly take-home pay is $1,900, your debt-to-income ratio would be 14%, which is healthy by any standards. Generally, a debt-to-income ratio is less than 15% is considered good, and you're probably managing your money well. If your debt-to-income ratio is between 15 and 25%, use caution. If it's higher than 25%, you need to seek help. For ratios higher than 35%, you're in a danger zone and need to get help immediately from a reputable consumer credit counseling agency. Change credit card habits. If you're serious about getting out of debt, the second step in tackling your debt is to not add new debt. Stop using your credit cards for a while until you get back on track and can pay the monthly payment in full each month. Limit spending to the bare necessities. Decide what cards you need to keep and which to ditch. Your ultimate goal is to keep 1 or 2 credit cards that you've had the longest, that you plan on keeping for a long time, and that have relatively low interest rates. Shop around for cards with low interest rates and low fees. Start by asking what cards are issued by the credit union and check out bankrate.com for a comparison list. Try to understand how you got into debt trouble in the first place. Do you have the urge to splurge when you're troubled or depressed? Are you unable to resist a sale, even when it's an item you don't need? Do you buy gifts to gain approval from others? Are things tied to your sense of self-worth? By understanding why you're overextended while taking steps to reduce debt, you'll greatly increase your chances of long-term success. Find extra cash to pay off debt faster. The third step in tackling your debt is to find extra cash so you can pay off your debt faster. Set up a spending plan or budget. The credit union has several budgeting tools, or pull one off the internet. There are plenty to choose from. As you set up a budget, identify and plug your spending leaks. We'll talk more about this later in the seminar. Have you been getting a large refund every year? If so, you've been giving an interest-free loan to the federal government. Instead, adjust your withholding on your W-4 by adding exemptions to increase your take-home pay. This way, you have access to your money all year round instead of getting a lump sum at tax time. Consider redirecting retirement contributions, but only temporarily, just to pay down debt. Be careful. First, check with a financial planner to see if this option is right for your situation. Consider taking on a part-time job to help pay down debt. Or liquidate some assets to put towards debt. Examples include a garage sale, Craigslist, eBay, consignment shop, or putting ads in the local newspaper. Use 401k loans with caution. As you tackle your debt, use caution when considering borrowing from your employer's retirement plan. On the surface, a 401k loan appears to have some advantages over a traditional loan. There's no application form and no credit check. You can borrow up to 50% of your vested amount or $50,000, whichever is less. If you repay on time, the loan is shielded from taxes and penalties. The best part, you pay the loan and interest back to yourself. But there's more on this story. The interest you pay yourself when taking out a 401k loan is taxable by the IRS. Here's another downside. Although you have a 5-year repayment window, if you leave your employer, even if it's not your choice to leave, most plans require you to pay the outstanding balance within 30 to 60 days. And if you can't repay the balance, your loan is considered in default, and the government treats the outstanding balance as a taxable withdrawal. You'd owe income taxes on the outstanding balance, and if you're younger than age 59 and a half, you also may owe an early withdrawal penalty. That could force you to cash in more of the plan assets to make those payments. And that amount also is subject to taxes and a possible penalty. Be aware that some plans charge you fees when you borrow from your 401k. That may be a one-time fee, a maintenance fee, or a combination of the two. Also, some organizations don't allow you to make 401k contributions while you have a loan outstanding, which eats into your long-term returns on investment and the total nest egg you'll have when you retire. Each plan may have different fee structures, so ask your plan administrator about the rules before you borrow. And talk to people at your credit union about other loan options. If you own a home, one alternative may be a home equity line of credit. Consolidate some debt. If you have a lot of credit card balances, you may be tempted to take out a debt consolidation loan. This strategy involves taking out a new loan and closing old credit accounts after using the debt consolidation loan proceeds to pay them off. Be aware that there are both pros and cons to a debt consolidation loan. First, the pros. If you consolidate 5 accounts, you'll have one payment for all the debts you consolidated instead of 5 separate payments. That's a huge plus. But the cons typically outweigh the pros. There's a possibility that your credit score could suffer. Because your loan payments are stretched out over time, there likely will be a higher total cost to repay the outstanding debt. There's danger of losing your house if the loan is secured with a home equity. You could get into credit card trouble all over again if you just keep using credit cards. You may have to pay a higher interest rate than that you were charged before, or worse yet, you may be paying interest on debt that was previously interest-free. Examples, legal or medical bills. What's the right way to do it? Take out a debt consolidation loan only if the interest rate on that loan is lower than the interest rates on the debts you're consolidating, and if you're sure you won't add new debt until the loan is repaid. Choose method to pay down debt. Clearly, the most effective strategy for paying down debt is to put as much money towards the highest interest rate debt first, while making minimum payments on all other debts. This is called the power play method. This way, you get rid of the most expensive debt first, which puts you further ahead on your debt repayment schedule. However, some people get frustrated with this method if that high rate debt is huge and they don't see immediate progress towards paying it off. Worst case scenario, they quit their debt repayment program altogether and fall deeper into debt. If the power pay method doesn't work for you, another strategy, sometimes called the snowball method, and not as effective as the power pay method, is to make minimum payments on everything except the smallest debt and focus on getting rid of that small debt. Once it's paid off, apply the extra money to the next smallest debt and so on. This way you have one less debt, so there's some tangible reward. A slight increase in credit score plus an intangible reward. You feel good. You can see that the total amount you're paying off really doesn't change. Just where it goes changes. Be careful though. When you only have one or two debts left to repay, you'll feel like celebrating. But actually, you may not have paid off half of your debt yet. Remember, use the second method only as a backup plan if the power pay method doesn't work for you. The most important thing is to choose the method that works for you and stick to it to get rid of your debt. Call creditors. If you can't pay your bills or think you're going to be having a difficult time paying your bills in the very near future, the worst thing you could do is ignore your creditors. Call them before they call you. Making a good faith effort can go a long way toward positive resolution of your money problems. Make sure you agree on a repayment plan that's reasonable and affordable. Some questions you may consider asking the creditors. Would you be willing to lower my interest rate? Or would you be willing to reduce the total amount of my debt? But before you make the call to negotiate a repayment plan, know what you can afford to pay given all your other obligations. Don't agree to any plan that you know you can't afford. If you do negotiate a repayment plan, definitely stick to it. Get help. If your discussions with creditors break down, ask for help from the credit union. Or staff can refer you to reputable counselors or agencies to intervene with creditors on your behalf, such as a consumer credit counseling service. Beware, though, that some credit counselors may require that you cut up all or most of your credit cards. This seminar isn't intended to go into the details of bankruptcy, but know that bankruptcy should be used only as a last resort. Why? Because it will be listed on your credit report for up to 10 years, visible to anyone granting you credit, and resulting in higher interest rates and much higher interest payments over time. To be sure, bankruptcy is a costly option. Bad credit? Avoid pitfalls. Steer clear of any advertisement that claims to erase your bad credit history. You can't erase history. They may be able to temporarily hide some negative information on your report, but be prepared for it to show up again. Negative but accurate information can stay on your credit report for up to 7 years. Steer clear of advance fee loans. Never pay a fee just for the promise of a loan. This is a sure sign of a scam. Steer clear of rent-to-own stores. These agreements typically result in payments that total 2 to 3 or more times what the item is worth. And there's no guarantee that the goods are new. They may have been repossessed. Steer clear of payday loans. They're expensive short-term loans against your next paycheck with annualized interest rates that could be more than 700%. Many people wind up renewing these loans with additional fees each time, resulting in a cycle of debt that's difficult to break. Steer clear of pawn shops. You won't be offered even close to the object's value. Consolidating all your debts into one high interest rate loan may seem to streamline your payments, but a higher interest rate in exchange for that one payment means you're paying more than you were before. Check with the credit union first and ask about rates. And any consolidation only include debts with interest rates that are higher than the interest rate you get for the consolidation loan. Don't include low interest rate debt. Keep those separate. Debt settlement is a process to settle outstanding debts with creditors, but the costs are high and there are pitfalls. Either you or a third party negotiates with creditors for a reduced amount, usually 40 to 60%, that you agree to pay. Options include reducing the principal debt amount, eliminating late fees, lowering the APR, and providing a flexible repayment period. Remember, debt settlement will remain on your credit score for about 7 to 10 years and can lower your credit score. And you will owe income tax on the amount discounted. 5 don'ts. In addition to the pitfalls on the previous slide, remember these 5 don'ts as you develop your plan to pay down your debt. Don't ignore your debts. What should you do as soon as you think you might fall behind on your payments? Call your creditors before they call you. Don't carry your credit cards with you if you're prone to impulse purchases. Instead, consider freezing them in a container of water. This way, you have to wait to thaw the cards out before using them. But don't thaw them in the microwave. Why? It ruins the magnetic strip. Don't ask for credit limit increases. Why? Because you may be tempted to charge up to that limit. Don't use credit cards for consumables such as food. Why? Because if you carry a balance from one month to the next, you're paying interest on that food you ate months and months ago. And don't use credit repair agencies. Why? Because they charge high fees for things you can do yourself for free. And they claim they can erase your bad credit history. No one can erase history. Tips to rebuild your credit history. Here are some useful tips to rebuild your credit history and get back on track. If you're having problems getting approved for any credit, consider a secured credit card through the credit union. You'll have to provide collateral, usually cash in the form of a deposit account. The amount in the deposit account usually determines the limit on the secured credit card. These accounts present no real risk factor for creditors and are therefore much easier to obtain. It is up to you then to use that line of credit responsibly. That is, pay off balances on time to establish a good bill paying history so you can get other forms of credit in the future. Close unwanted accounts if you are not planning to apply for credit in the next several months. Get help. Ask the credit union staff for referrals to credit counselors, either in-house or with reputable counselors in the community. Ask the credit union about debt consolidation options. Remember not to include any of your existing debts that have interest rates lower than the debt consolidation interest rate you're being offered. 10 tips to stay out of debt. We've talked about different kinds of debt, the cost of having a poor credit history, ways to tackle your debt, pitfalls to avoid, and tips to rebuild a good credit history. The next several slides explain how you can stay out of debt. Let's look at each one in a little more detail. Build an emergency fund. Just one unbudgeted expense, like a major car repair or a dead refrigerator, could throw your monthly budget into a tailspin. And the primary reason most people today are saving money is because they're worried about getting a pink slip. The recession and high unemployment rate woke up a lot of people to the need to save money for a rainy day. No matter how the economy is doing, you can't afford not to have an emergency fund. How can you accumulate one? Here are some tips. 1. Track your spending and figure out how much you need to save. Ideally, you want to save 3 to 6 months of living expenses. More if the unemployment rate in your area is really high. 2. If you're starting from scratch, temporarily stop or reduce contributions to retirement savings, except for the amount you need to get the employer match. Once your emergency fund is built up, resume those contributions. 3. Cut back on unnecessary expenses and redirect those dollars to your emergency fund. If you get a raise, save it, and save your tax refund. 4. Involve the whole family. Ask the kids for ideas of low-cost family fun, such as picnics instead of eating out, or reducing the number of pizza toppings. And 5, automate it. Start small and have a set amount automatically transferred into your savings. That way, you won't miss it. And finally, number 6, don't touch it unless you have an unbudgeted necessary expense. Track your spending, all of it. Here's another must-do if you're going to successfully stay out of debt. Know where your money goes. If you've never tracked your spending, start by writing down every penny spent for the next 2 to 4 weeks. Use a tracking worksheet. Keep a notebook in your pocket or purse. It's really not that difficult. Keep all of your receipts. And if you don't get a receipt, make one. If you lose receipts, tape an envelope to the refrigerator to hold them. Keep receipts for 3 months ideally. Group them by category. Add each category, divide by 3, and that's your average monthly expenditure on that category. You can use the envelope method in one of 2 ways. 1, write categories on envelopes and place receipts in them. Or 2, allocate cash into each envelope for monthly expenses for that category. Some people prefer the checkbook or account book, which are self-explanatory. Or use a computer program such as Mint.com, Quicken, Microsoft Money, or QuickBooks. But you must have discipline to enter data regularly. There's no one right method for everyone, so choose one that works for you. Trim spending leaks. Once you have a handle on where your money goes and you've set up a budget or spending plan we talked about earlier, then it's time to trim those spending leaks. Everyone has them. So if you're trying to find a little extra cash to pay down your debts faster, reviewing your spending leaks is a good place to start. Cutting back or cutting out even just a few of the so-called little things can add up to big savings. Here's an example. Let's say you cut out that daily $3.50 cup of coffee. You'd save about $25 a week, $100 a month, or $1,200 a year. Plug your spending leaks. After you identify your spending leaks, then it's time to think about making changes to plug those spending leaks. Here are some tips. First, learn to recognize triggers that put you in the spending situation in the first place. If you meet friends at your favorite coffee shop, Meet them somewhere else so you're not tempted to buy that expensive latte. Stop and ask yourself if you really need it. What are your financial goals? Does this purchase help you reach your goals? Could you do without it? Can you make it for less money than buying it? Can you borrow someone else's? Can you substitute it for something less expensive? If you decide it's a low priority, say no and walk away. Stick to the spending limits that you set for your spending plan. And finally, try to reduce waste to help save money. Combine errands to save on gasoline. Use compact fluorescent bulbs to save on electricity, or install a low-flow shower head to save on the water bill. Research has proven that it takes 3 to 4 weeks to break an old habit, so be patient. Don't expect miracles overnight. Start small, and eventually you'll see big savings by plugging those spending leaks. Tip: use the step-down principle. If you're stumped on how to plug spending leaks and save money, here's a tip. Use the step-down principle, where you reduce spending in gradual stages rather than eliminate spending on an item completely. Use clothing as an example. Think of the top rung of the stairs as a department store. The next step down may be slightly less expensive. Discount store, then a consignment store, then perhaps Salvation Army, and oftentimes a garage sale may be the least expensive option. The more steps down, the greater your savings. Here's another example of how to use the step-down principle. After making required loan payments, use any extra money you have left to eliminate your most expensive debt first, the loan with the highest interest rate. It'll bring you the greatest savings the fastest. After you pay that debt, put extra money towards the next most expensive debt, and so on. Bottom line, the step-down principle makes you aware of spending habits and opens your eyes to other options. Establish a spending plan. Once you've started tracking where your money goes and identifying spending leaks, set up a budget or a spending plan based on realistic numbers. What are the benefits of a spending plan? Helps you stay on track financially. Helps you decide where your money goes. Helps you make informed choices. Helps you determine whether you're living within your means. Helps you develop a savings plan. Helps you control your financial future. A spending plan is so much more than just a worksheet with numbers. Think of it as a blueprint for your day-to-day personal finances, or a puzzle, and you need to gather all the pieces. The most important puzzle pieces: income and expenses. Examples of income include paycheck, bonus, interest dividends, child support or alimony, tax refund, pension, rental income, Social Security income, or gifts. Examples of expenses include fixed, mortgage or car payment, variable flexible, food, clothing, utilities, gifts, and periodic, insurance or taxes. There are many budget forms on the internet. Choose one that works for you. The basic steps are the same no matter which form you use. List all income and expenses, balance your income and expenses, and then manage your system. Remember, the key to this whole budget puzzle is that you track your spending and identify your own spending leaks. Figure your own credit limit. Once you have a better handle on your spending plan, calculate how much is safe to spend on credit cards going forward. Here's where you need to do a simple calculation based on your income and expenses so you know what your safe limit is. Consider two different calculation methods. The conservative approach is generally considered a more safe limit to use. Remember that the flexible approach doesn't account for housing costs. Charge it responsibly. If you use credit cards, make sure you use them wisely as you're paying down your debt and from now on. Get a handle on needs versus wants. Remember, needs are food, water, shelter, clothing, and air. Shoes fit into the clothing category, but are expensive brand name shoes a need or a want? Make a list of items you'll allow yourself to charge and stick to it. That may help to reduce the urge to splurge on expensive items you may end up paying interest on over the course of months or years. And unless you pay off the balance in full each month, it's not prudent to charge groceries on your credit card. Remember, if you're an impulse shopper, consider putting your credit card into a container of water and freezing it. This forces you to have to think about the purchase as it's thawing. Don't thaw it in the microwave. For any purchase you make on a credit card, make sure you keep the receipt so you can check your statement for accuracy. Card insurers do make mistakes, so don't assume the statement is accurate, and keep track of how much you owe. Keep it under your safe credit limit. What's the best way to use credit cards? Only charge as much as you can afford to pay in full when the bill comes due. That way you don't pay interest. What does the minimum payment trap actually cost you? What's one of the worst ways to use credit cards? Charging a lot of purchases and only making minimum payments when the bill comes due. Why? Because you're paying the maximum in interest. Let's assume your interest rate is 18% and you only pay the minimum of 4% due each month on the balances that you owe. If you owe $2,000 on credit cards and you only pay the minimum required, it will take you 9.5 years to pay off that balance, and you'll pay $1,116 in interest charges. So the actual cost of the $2,000 purchase is more than $3,100. But look at what you can save by paying a little more than the minimum. In this case, paying a steady $100 a month, you'll be a credit card debt-free in only 2 years at a savings of $720. That could be the equivalent of a month's rent or 2 or 3 car payments. Here's the kicker. For these examples, assume you don't make any additional charges during those payoff years. Experts advise that you always pay more than the minimum and, if possible, only charge as much as you can afford to pay in full when the statement is due. Now, the Card Act of 2009 requires that your statement include a chart showing the cost of only making minimum payments. It's a good reminder of what credit costs and why you should only charge as much as you can afford to pay off in full at the end of each month. What's your utilization rate? To explain utilization rate, let's talk about utilization rate as it relates to your credit limit. Your credit limit is the amount you can charge up to. Let's say your credit limit is $10,000 on all your cards combined. If you charge $9,000 on those cards, your utilization rate is 90% in this example. Lenders who look at your credit report may say, that person has used a high percentage of his credit limit and may not be able to pay or manage his bills, so we'll charge a higher interest rate because he looks like a high risk. Similarly, even a 50% utilization rate is considered too high. However, if you keep your total charges below 25%, in the case of a $10,000 credit limit, 25% is $2,500, your utilization rate stays below 25%, and you'll likely get good interest rates and be accepted for loans at reasonable rates when you apply for them, as long as you have a good bill-paying history. A more reasonable credit limit for many people for one card is around $3,000. So 25% of that is $750. That's why you need to track all your purchases with credit, so you don't go over 25% of whatever your credit limit is. Sure, you could maintain a 25% utilization rate on one card and charge more by getting a second card, but then you risk not being able to manage multiple credit card payments. Not a good plan. Bottom line, don't charge up to your credit limit just because it's there. Know what your credit limit is and keep your charges below 25% of that limit, except perhaps for emergencies. And when you do charge, try to make sure you can afford to pay it off in full when your payment is due. Automate it. Another great tip to help stay out of debt is to automate your finances as much as possible. Set up direct deposit and payroll deductions at the credit union. Pay bills online, which is safer than mailing checks, and statements that contain account numbers through the postal system. Here's another benefit of online banking. You can check your statement for accuracy 24/7. And if you're ever faced with a natural disaster and you have to leave your area, you can still pay bills online from wherever you are. Get off mailing lists. Here's a good tip that could prevent tempting credit card offers, as well as a lot of paper, from coming into your house in the first place. Opt out of receiving credit and insurance solicitation offers. There are 2 ways to do this. Call 888-5-OPT-OUT to get off most credit card and insurance consolidation lists, or visit optoutprescreen.com. You will be asked if you want to be taken off the mailing list for 5 years or permanently. At any time, you can undo whichever option you choose. You will need to provide your Social Security number for this service, but it's okay in this situation. This service is affiliated with the Big 3 credit reporting agencies, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Any issuers affiliated with the Big 3 will stop sending you offers in the mail, but you will receive offers that aren't affiliated with the Big 3. But this opt-out service will greatly reduce the number of offers you receive. Know rights and responsibilities. Along with the privilege of being able to use credit cards or take out loans comes both rights and responsibilities. Each of the laws on this slide help protect you in a number of different ways. But in addition to having these consumer rights, using credit is a privilege that requires responsibility on your part. Here are just a few key points for each of the laws. The FCRA and FACT Act. You can get a free copy of your credit report each year from each of the Big 3 credit reporting agencies. It's free if you're denied credit, but you must ask for your report within 60 days of being denied. Also, it's free if you're unemployed, on welfare, or a victim of fraud. The FACT Act called for a national financial literacy campaign to emphasize education efforts. ECOA prohibits credit discrimination on the basis of sex, race, marital status, religion, national origin, age, or receipt of public assistance. FCBA and EFTA mandates procedures for resolving mistakes on credit billing and electronic fund transfer account statements. FDCPA prohibits debt collectors from calling you after 9 p.m. or before 8 a.m. They can't call you at work if they know your employer disapproves. They can harass, abuse, or lie when collecting debts. The Card Act. Card companies must tell you when they're raising your rate or fees and how long it will take you to pay off your balance. They can't raise your interest rate for the first year. There are caps on high-fee cards and protections and requirements for consumers under age 21. Know who to call. It's your responsibility. Here's an important tip related to your responsible use of credit. It's your responsibility to prepare for the fact that you could lose your credit cards. That means knowing ahead of time who you need to call to report the loss or theft. Planning ahead can actually save you a lot of money if this happens to you. Let's see whether you know who to call with this quick quiz. Note that there may be more than one answer for each of the following cards on the left-hand side of the screen. So who do you call? For Visa card, you call the credit union or bank that issued the card. For MasterCard, you call the credit union or bank that issued the card. For American Express, you call American Express. Remember, banks and credit unions issue MasterCard and Visa, while American Express issues American Express cards. Take out your wallet and look at the back of your cards. Do you see a telephone number to call? What should you do with that telephone number now, in event it's lost, stolen, or you lose it? Keep a list of phone numbers in your wallet so you can call quickly. Maintain a list of both phone numbers and account numbers in a safe place at home if your wallet is stolen. Don't keep a list of account numbers in your wallet. Pay bills on time. The 10th tip to stay out of debt is really very simple and very important. Pay all your bills on time. What happens when you pay late? What are some of the consequences? You'll be charged with a late payment fee. Your credit score may suffer. You will pay higher rates on loans, credit cards, and even insurance. You may not get that job you apply for, and you may not get that apartment you want to rent. How can you avoid making late payments? Ask for an easy-to-remember due date. Use auto bill pay. Use online banking through the credit union. If you have a good payment history otherwise, ask for a fee waiver. Tips to lay a solid foundation. The best way to establish and build a good credit history is to lay a solid foundation and have the right tools in place. Open a checking account at the credit union and use it responsibly. Don't bounce checks and apply for only one, store credit card or a card from a gas station. Then, to establish a good credit history, only charge as much as you can afford to pay in full when the bill comes due each month. Caution: don't open 15 of these store or gas cards or you'll get overwhelmed by all the statements. And having too many cards just promotes overspending. But if you have problems getting approved for a gas or retail card, or even for a personal loan or major credit card like MasterCard or Visa, consider a secured credit card through the credit union. The amount in the deposit account usually determines your limit on the secured credit card. These accounts present no real risk factor for creditors and are typically a lot easier to obtain. It's up to you then to use that line of credit responsibly. That means when you charge something, you need to pay it off on time to establish a good bill paying history so you can get other forms of credit in the future. Other ways to establish a good credit history include getting a small loan and paying it back promptly, and having a mix of credit over time. Build your resource toolkit. We've covered a lot of topics in a relatively short period of time, including different kinds of debt and how to determine if you have too much, how to improve your credit report and credit score, how to start tackling your debt, ways to avoid the pitfalls of credit, how to rebuild a good credit history, and most importantly, 10 ways to stay out of debt. We encourage you to build your own resource toolkit as you gather more information. Add to the list, print the ones that you find most useful, and start a file that you can access quickly if you need it. Make it yours. You may even want to add some additional categories such as budgeting, saving, or investing. Topics that weren't covered in this seminar, but that can help you with your overall personal financial goals. A personal action plan. Our goal for this seminar is to not only give you the tools and information you need to help improve your credit situation, but to help you develop a personalized action plan based on your needs, your credit situation, and your goals. From the discussion today, list action items you plan to take and a date when you plan to complete them. Write your action items and dates in pencil because you may change your mind, reprioritize, make adjustments, or you may decide you need a second page. Consider this list your personalized roadmap that will help you lead you down a path to getting out of debt and staying out of debt. Good luck. If anyone has any questions or comments, or if you'd like additional information on the presentation, please contact Credit Union of New Jersey at memberservices@cunj.org. Thank you.